Hello, beautiful squirrels. Happy Tuesday. Groundhog Day, isn't it? Yeah, it's the second. I haven't heard whether we're having an early spring or 6 more weeks of winter. I'm hoping for spring. I don't mind winter, except for the doggone power bill. That stinks. Alright, chapter 10 is called The Manse Girl's Clean House. Ugh, said Faith, sitting up in bed with a shiver. It's raining. I do hate a rainy Sunday. Sunday is dull enough even when it's fine. We oughtn't to find Sunday dull, said Una sleepily, trying to pull her drowsy wits together with an uneasy conviction that they had overslept. But we do, you know, said Faith candidly. Mary Vance says most Sundays are so dull she could hang herself. We ought to like Sunday better than Mary Vance, said Una remorsefully. We're the minister's children. I wish we were a blacksmith's children, protested Faith, angrily hunting for her stockings. Then people wouldn't expect us to be better than other children. Just look at the holes in my heels. Mary darned them all up before she went away, but they're as bad as ever now. Una, get up. I can't make the breakfast alone. Oh dear, I wish Father and Jerry were home. You wouldn't think we'd miss Father much. We don't see much of him when he's home, and yet everything seems gone. I must run in and see how Aunt Martha is. Is she any better? Asked Una when Faith returned. No, she isn't. She's groaning with the misery still. Maybe we ought to tell Dr. Blythe, but she says not. She never had a doctor in her life, and she isn't going to begin now. She says doctors just live by poisoning people. Do you suppose they do? No, of course not, said Una indignantly. I'm sure Dr. Blythe wouldn't poison anybody. Well, we'll have to rub Aunt Martha's back again after breakfast. We'd better not make the flannels as hot as we did yesterday. Faith giggled over the remembrance. They had nearly scalded the skin off poor Aunt Martha's back. Una sighed. Mary Vance would have known just what the precise temperature of flannels for a misery back should be. Mary knew everything. They knew nothing, and how could they learn, save by bitter experience for which, in this instance, unfortunate Aunt Martha had paid? The preceding Monday, Mr. Meredith had left for Nova Scotia. I'm warming my hands, that's why I'm kind of leaning over this way. Got my little heater on down here. Preceding Monday, Mr. Meredith had left for Nova Scotia to spend his short vacation, taking Jerry with him. On Wednesday, Aunt Martha was suddenly seized with a recurring and mysterious ailment which she always called the misery, and which was tolerably certain to attack her at the most inconvenient times. She could not rise from her bed. Any movement caused agony. A doctor she flatly refused to have. Faith and Una cooked the meals and waited on her. The less said about the meals, the better, yet they were not much worse than Aunt Martha's had been. There were many women in the village who would have been glad to come and help, but Aunt Martha refused to let her plight be known. You must worry on till I can get around, she groaned. Thank goodness John isn't here. There's a plenty of cold boiled meat and bread, and you can try your hand at making porridge. The girls had tried their hand, but so far without much success. The first day it had been too thin. The next day so thick that you could cut it in slices, and both days it had been burned. I hate porridge, said Faith viciously. When I have a house of my own, I'm never going to have a single bit of porridge in it. What'll your children do then? Asked Una. Children have to have porridge or they won't grow. Everybody says so. They'll have to get along without it or stay runts, retorted Faith stubbornly. Here, Una, you stir it while I set the table. If I leave it for a minute, the hard stuff will burn. It's 9:30. We'll be late for Sunday school. I haven't seen anyone going past yet, said Una. There won't likely be many out. Just see how it's pouring. And when there's no preaching, the folks won't come from a distance to bring the children. Go and call Carl, said Faith. Carl, it appeared, had a sore throat induced by getting wet in the Rainbow Valley marsh the previous evening while pursuing dragonflies. He had come home with dripping stockings and boots and had set out the evening in them. He could not eat any breakfast, and Faith made him go back to bed again. She and Una left the table as it was and went to Sunday school. There was no one in the schoolroom when they got there, and no one came. They waited until 11 and then went home. There doesn't seem to be anybody at the Methodist Sunday school either, said Una. I'm glad, said Faith. I'd hate to think the Methodists were better at going to Sunday school on rainy Sundays than the Presbyterians. But there's no preaching in their church today either, so likely their Sunday school is in the afternoon. Una washed the dishes, doing them quite nicely, for so much had she learned from Mary Vance. Faith swept the floor after a fashion and peeled the potatoes for dinner, cutting her finger in the process. I wish we had something for dinner besides ditto, sighed Una. I'm so tired of it. The Blythe children don't know what ditto is, and we never have any pudding. Nan says Susan would faint if they had no pudding on Sundays. Why aren't we like other people, Faith? I don't want to be like other people, laughed Faith, tying up her bleeding finger. I like myself. It's more interesting. Jessie Drew is as good a housekeeper as her mother. But would you want to be as stupid as she is? But our house isn't right. Mary Vance says so. She says people talk about it being so untidy. Faith had an inspiration. We'll clean it all up, she cried. We'll go right to work tomorrow. It's a real good chance. When Aunt Martha is laid up and can't interfere with us, we'll have it all lovely and clean when Father comes home, just like it was when Mary went away. Anyone can sweep and dust and wash windows. People won't be able to talk about us anymore. Jim Blythe says it's only old cats that talk, but their talk hurts just as much as anybody's. I hope it will be fine tomorrow, said Una, fired with enthusiasm. Oh, Faith, it will be splendid to be all cleaned up and like other people. I hope Aunt Martha's misery will last over tomorrow, said Faith. If it doesn't, we won't get a single thing done. Faith's amiable wish was fulfilled. The next day found Aunt Martha still unable to rise. Carl, too, was still sick and easily prevailed on to stay in bed. Neither Faith nor Una had any idea how sick the boy really was. A watchful mother would have had a doctor without delay, but there was no mother, and poor little Carl, with his sore throat and aching head and crimson cheeks, rolled himself up in his twisted bedclothes and suffered alone, somewhat comforted by the companionship of a small green lizard in the pocket of his ragged nightie. The world was full of summer sunshine after the rain. It was a peerless day for house cleaning, and Faith and Una went gaily to work. We'll clean the dining room and the parlor, said Faith. It wouldn't do to meddle with the study, and it doesn't matter much about the upstairs. The first thing is to take everything out. Accordingly, everything was taken out. The furniture was piled on the veranda and lawn, and the Methodist graveyard fence was gaily draped with rugs. An orgy of sweeping followed, with an attempt at dusting on Una's part, while Faith washed the windows of the dining room, breaking one pane and cracking two in the process. Doggone. She was applying some pressure. Una surveyed the streak result dubiously. They don't look right somehow, she said. Mrs. Elliott's and Susan's windows just shine and sparkle. Never mind, they let the sun shine through just as well, said Faith cheerfully. They must be clean after all the soap and water I've used. That's the main thing. Now it's past 11, so I'll wipe up this mess on the floor and we'll go outside. You dust the furniture and I'll shake the rugs. I'm going to do it in the graveyard. I don't want to send dust flying all over the lawn. Faith enjoyed the rug shaking. To stand on Hezekiah Pollock's tombstone flapping and shaking rugs was real fun. To be sure, Elder Abraham Clow and his wife driving past in their capacious double-seated buggy seemed to gaze at her in grim disapproval. "Isn't that a terrible sight?" said Elder Abraham solemnly. "I would never have believed it if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes," said Mrs. Elder Abraham more solemnly still. Faith waved a doormat cheerily at the Clow party. It did not worry her that the elder and his wife did not return her greeting. Everybody knew that Elder Abraham had never been known to smile since he had been appointed superintendent of the Sunday school 14 years previously, but it hurt her that Minnie and Adela Clow did not wave back. Faith liked Minnie and Adela. Next to the Blythes, they were best friends in school, and she always helped Adela with her sums. This was gratitude for you. Her friends cut her because she was shaking rugs in the old graveyard where, as Mary Vance said, not a living soul had been buried for years. A living soul. Hope not. Faith flounced around to the veranda where she found Una grieved in spirit because the Clow girls had not waved to her either. "I suppose they're mad over something," said Faith. "Perhaps they're jealous because we play so much in the Rainbow Valley with the Blythes. Well, just wait till school opens and Adela wants me to show her how to do her sums. We'll get square then. Come on, let's put the things back in. I'm tired to death and don't believe the rooms will look much better than before we started. Though I shook out pecks of dust in the graveyard. I hate house cleaning." "Me too." It was 2 o'clock before the tired girls finished the 2 rooms. They got a dreary bite in the kitchen and intended to wash the dishes at once, but Faith happened to pick up a new storybook Di Blythe had lent her and was lost to the world until sunset. Una took a cup of rank tea up to Carl but found him asleep. Ew, rank tea? Gross. "I don't have rank tea, but I treated myself to a Starbucks today. It's cold now, but not really cold, just not hot. It is a peppermint mocha latte. I haven't had a Starbucks in forever. Well, since I met up with Irene, it's been a couple weeks, but before that, it was a long time. Okay, where am I? Hate house cleaning. It was 2 o'clock before the tired girls finished the 2 rooms. They got a dreary bite in the kitchen and intended to wash the dishes at once, but Faith... Oh, I read that. But Faith picked up a new storybook Di Blythe had lent her and was lost to the world until sunset. Oh, I read all this. About the rank tea. She took the rank tea up to Carl but found him asleep, so she curled up herself on Jerry's bed and went to sleep too. Meanwhile, a weird story flew through the Glen, St. Mary, and folks asked each other seriously what was to be done with those Mance youngsters. "That is past laughing at, believe me," said Miss Cornelia to her husband with a heavy sigh. "I couldn't believe it at first. Miranda Drew brought the story home from the Methodist Sunday School this afternoon, and I simply scoffed at it. But Mrs. Elder Abraham says she and the elders saw it with their own eyes." "Saw what?" asked Marshall. Faith and Una Meredith stayed home from Sunday school this morning and cleaned house, said Miss Cornelia in the accents of despair. When Elder Abraham went home from the church, he had stayed behind to straighten out the library books. He saw them shaking rugs in the Methodist graveyard. I could never look a Methodist in the face again. Just think what a scandal it will make. A scandal it assuredly did make, growing more scandalous as it spread until the over-harbor people heard that the Mance children had not only cleaned house and put out washing on Sunday, but had wound up an afternoon picnic in the graveyard while the Methodist Sunday school was going on. The only household which remained in blissful ignorance of the terrible thing was the Mance itself, on what Faith and Una fondly believed to be Tuesday. Hang on. Mance itself. On what Faith and Una fondly believed to be Tuesday, it rained again. For the next 3 days it rained. Nobody came near the Mance. The Mance folk went nowhere. They might have waded through the misty Rainbow Valley up to Ingleside, but all the Blythe family, save Susan and the doctor, were away on a visit to Avonlea. This is the last of our bread, said Faith, and the ditto is done. If Aunt Martha doesn't get better soon, what will we do? We can buy some bread in the village, and there's the codfish Mary dried, said Una. But we don't know how to cook it. Oh, that's easy. Oh, no. Lost my plate. Oh, here it is. Oh, that's easy, laughed Faith. You just boil it. Boil it they did, but as it did not occur to them to soak it beforehand, it was too salty to eat. That night they were very hungry, but by the following day their troubles were over. Sunshine returned to the world, Carl was well, and Aunt Martha's misery left her as suddenly as it had come. The butcher called at the Mance and chased famine away. To crown all, the Blythes returned home, and that evening they and the Mance children and Mary Vance kept sunset tryst once more in Rainbow Valley. Rainbow Valley, where the daisies were floating upon the grass-like spirits of the dew, and bells on the tree lovers rang like fairy chimes in the scented twilight. And that's all of 10. Chapter 11 is called A Dreadful Discovery. Oh no! Let's read this one too. Oh, dreadful discovery. Well, you kids have gone and done it now, was Mary's greeting as she joined them in the valley. Miss Cornelia was up at Ingleside holding agonized conclave with Ann and Susan. And Mary hoped that the session might be a long one, for it was all of 2 weeks since she had been allowed to revel with her chums in the dear Valley of Rainbows. Done what? Demanded everybody but Walter, who was daydreaming as usual. It's you Mance young ones, I mean, said Mary. It was just awful of you. I wouldn't have done such a thing for the world, and I weren't brought up in a Mance. Weren't brought up anywhere, just come up. What have we done? Asked Faith blankly. Done? You'd better ask. The talk is something terrible. I expect it's ruined your father and his congregation. He'll never be able to live it down, poor man. Everybody blames him for it, and that isn't fair. But nothing is fair in this world. You ought to be ashamed of yourselves. What have we done? Asked Una again, despairingly. Faith said nothing, but her eyes flashed golden brown scorn at Mary. Oh, don't pretend innocent, said Mary, withering. Everybody knows what you've done. I don't, interjected Jim Blythe indignantly. Don't let me catch you making Una cry, Mary Vance. What are you talking about? I suppose you don't know, since you're just back from up west, said Mary, somewhat subdued. Jim could always manage her, but everybody else knows, you'd better believe. Knows what? That Faith and Una stayed home from Sunday school last Sunday and cleaned house. We didn't, cried Faith and Una in passionate denial. Faith looked haughtily at them. I didn't suppose you'd deny it after the way you've combed me down for lying, she said. What's the good of saying you didn't? Everybody knows you did. Elder Clow and his wife saw you. Some people say it will break up the church, but I don't go that far. You are nice ones. Nan Blythe stood up and put her arms around the dazed Faith and Una. They were nice enough to take you in and feed you and clothe you when you were starving in Mr. Taylor's barn, Mary Vance, she said. You are very grateful, I must say. I am grateful, retorted Mary. You'd know it if you'd heard me standing up for Mr. Meredith through thick and thin. I've blistered my tongue talking for him this week. I've said again and again that he isn't to blame if his young ones did clean house on Sunday. He was away and they knew better. But we didn't, protested Una. It was Monday we cleaned house, wasn't it, Faith? Of course it was, said Faith with flashing eyes. We went to Sunday school in spite of the rain and no one came, not even Elder Abraham, for all his talk about fair-weather Christians. It was Saturday it rained, said Mary. Sunday was as fine as silk. I wasn't at Sunday school because I had a toothache, but everyone else was, and they saw all your stuff out on the lawn, and Elder Abraham and Mrs. Elder Abraham saw you shaking rugs in the graveyard. Una sat down among the daisies and began to cry. Look here, said Jim resolutely. This thing must be cleared up. Somebody has made a mistake. Sunday was fine, Faith. How could you have thought Saturday was Sunday? The prayer meeting was Thursday night, cried Faith, and Adam flew into the soup pot on Friday. When Aunt Martha's cat chased him and spoiled our dinner, and Saturday there was a snake in the cellar, and Carl caught it with a forked stick and carried it out, and Sunday it rained. So there. Prayer meeting was Wednesday night, said Mary. Elder Baxter was to lead, and he couldn't go Thursday night, and it was changed to Wednesday. You were just a day out, Faith Meredith. You did work on Sunday. Suddenly Faith burst into a peal of laughter. I suppose we did. What a joke. It isn't much of a joke for your father, said Mary sourly. It'll be all right when people find out it was just a mistake, said Faith carelessly. We'll explain. You can explain till you're black in the face, said Mary, but a lie like that'll travel faster and further than you ever will. I've seen more of the world than you, and I know. Besides, there are plenty of folks won't believe it was a mistake. They will if I tell them, said Faith. You can't tell everybody, said Mary. No, I tell you, you've disgraced your father. Una's evening was spoiled by this dire reflection, but Faith refused to be made uncomfortable. Besides, she had a plan that would put everything right, so she put the past with its mistake behind her and gave herself over to enjoyment of the present. Jim went away to fish, and Walter came out of his reverie and proceeded to describe the woods of heaven. Mary pricked up her ears and listened respectfully. Despite her awe of Walter, she reveled in his book talk. It always gave her a delightful sensation. Reading and talking makes my nose itch. I guess vibrations. The vibrations, woo! Book talk. It always gave her a delightful sensation. Walter had been reading his Coleridge that day, and he pictured a heaven where there were gardens bright with sinuous rills, where blossomed many an incense-bearing tree, and there were forests ancient as the hills, enfolding sunny spots of greenery. I didn't know there was any woods in heaven, said Mary with a long breath. I thought it was all streets and streets and streets. Of course there are woods, said Nan. Mother can't live without trees, and I can't, so what would be the use of going to heaven if there weren't any trees? There are cities, too, said the young dreamer, splendid cities, colored just like the manse, with sapphire towers and rainbow domes. They're built of gold and diamonds, whole streets of diamonds flashing like the sun. In the squares there are crystal fountains kissed by the light, and everywhere the asphodel blooms, the flower of heaven. Fancy, said Mary. I saw the main street in Charlottetown once and thought it was real grand, but I suppose it's nothing to heaven. Well, it all sounds gorgeous the way you tell it, but won't it be kind of dull, too? Oh, I guess we can have some fun when the angels' backs are turned, said Faith comfortably. Heaven is all fun, declared Di. The Bible doesn't say so, cried Mary, who had read so much of the Bible on Sunday afternoons, under Miss Cornelia's eye that she now considered herself quite an authority on it. Mother says the Bible language is figurative, said Nan. Does that mean that it isn't true? Asked Mary hopefully. No, not exactly, but I think it means that heaven will be just like what you'd like it to be. I'd like it to be just like Rainbow Valley, said Mary, with all you kids to gas and play with. Gas? That's good enough for me. Anyhow, we can't go to heaven till we're dead, and maybe not then, so what's the use of worrying? Here's Jim with a string of trout, and it's my turn to fry them. We ought to know more about heaven than Walter does when we're the minister's family, said Una as they walked home that night. We know just as much, but Walter can imagine, said Faith. Mrs. Elliott says he gets it from his mother. I do wish we hadn't made that mistake about Sunday, sighed Una. Don't worry over that. I've thought of a great plan to explain so that everybody will know, said Faith. Just wait. Just wait till tomorrow night. And that's all of chapter 11. So we got 2 chapters in and a little over 27 minutes. Not bad. I just felt like reading a little extra today. And there have been days here or there when I've missed, so got a little caught up. Love you guys. I'll see you around the YouTube streets. Not on live today, but I will be tomorrow live at 5. Up to something. Who knows what? Who knows what? Oh, did I tell you what chapter 12 is? It's titled An Explanation and a Dare. Okay, love y'all. Be sweet. Don't be ugly. Be crafty. Knit, crochet, whatever it is you do. Love you. Bye-bye.